There are squirrels everywhere. Everywhere. There's probably 20 squirrels around me. Look at them all. They're so cute. So forgiveness can be like carrying around a giant anchor, like the elephant in the room, a giant red thing that weighs a bazillion pounds that weighs you down. Do you want to forgive or do you not want to forgive? Is that even on your radar right now? Maybe not. So if not, you don't need to watch the rest of the video. So today I figured I'd give forgiveness a try. I'm not here to say that I'm perfect at it. I'm far from it. But I figured that if I have trouble with it, then some other people might have trouble with it. So I thought I'd give you a little rundown of what forgiveness is and what forgiveness is not. Because a lot of people have a false understanding of what forgiveness is. So let's see if we can clear up some of that confusion. So forgiveness, what is it? Forgiveness is letting go of resentment, anger, and hostility toward whoever it is that you feel has been unfair to you, even though you might be justified in having those feelings. Now, that includes forgiving yourself, because anytime forgiveness is mentioned, don't forget to include yourself in it, because a lot of times the hardest person to forgive is yourself for whatever thing you think you might have done or that you actually did. Forgiveness of yourself, it can be one of the hardest things to do. Forgiveness is not condoning or approving or excusing what happened, whatever that might be, whether it was yourself that did something or someone else who did something to you or some situation. So forgiveness is recognizing that whoever it is that did whatever they did is human, just like you're human, just like me, and treating them kind of decently, even though you might not agree with whatever it was they did. Forgiveness is not forgetting, because that's a popular saying, forgive and forget, right? No. Forgive, yes. Forget, no. No. Forgiveness is not forgetting how you were wronged or not pretending like nothing happened. Forgiveness is choosing to amend a relationship or repair a relationship if, and that's a big if you feel it's safe to do so, because sometimes people are needing to forgive someone else who seriously did wrong, like abusers and things like that. You don't have to amend that relationship. You don't have to keep having a relationship with that kind of person. Forgiveness is not an agreement to continue a relationship as it was, or if the relationship was an unhealthy one. You can choose to end the relationship, modify the relationship, limit your interactions with that person, unless it's yourself. Kind of hard to limit interactions with yourself. However, you can even amend the relationship with yourself by being more forgiving of yourself and recognizing that you're human. Forgiveness is also a mental shift. It's a change of heart, it's a change of mind, and it develops over time. It's not an event, it's a process. And forgiveness is not just saying, oh, I forgive you, without meaning it. Because if you just say, I forgive you, that's hollow, like saying I'm sorry. It's unless you really are sorry. Saying I'm sorry or saying I forgive you doesn't really mean anything. And the tricky part about forgiveness is you don't have to say I forgive you. You can forgive somebody without actually ever saying anything. You can forgive somebody without actually ever interacting with that person and saying, look, you did this, whatever, and I forgive you for that. You don't have to even do that. Letter writing is a great way to do that if you want to do something as a process. But you can actually just let go of that resentment in your heart and in your mind. I know personally I have a problem with someone in particular that I'm still working to forgive. Getting a little better, but still, it's still there. And so forgiveness is a process that you can start anytime. It doesn't have to be right after something happened. You can even forgive somebody who's not even alive anymore, who's not even in your life anymore. It's not something that you do for them. It's something that you do for yourself. It's a process of letting go of that resentment in yourself. for someone else, because that holding all that resentment and those grudges and that hatefulness for that other person, you might have heard this, is like drinking poison and hoping the other person dies. It really doesn't harm them at all for you not forgiving them. It only hurts you. How much time and energy and sleepless nights have you had plotting against somebody in your mind of how unjust whatever it was that happened, and you can't do anything about it? That's the hardest part, is because there's also a feeling of helplessness that goes along with whatever injustice it was that you need to forgive somebody for, or again, yourself. If you don't have that closure, we talked about closure, it's kind of that ambiguous loss thing. Forgiveness is a way to bring about some closure. Forgiveness is also an opportunity to heal. I mean, who doesn't want to heal, right? It can reduce feelings of anger and anxiety and depression, trauma. And it can increase your hope, and it can increase your self-esteem, especially when there was abuse of some kind. A lot of times with abusive situations, self-esteem really takes a hit, and no pun intended. It really messes with your self-esteem. Forgiveness is not getting even, it's not getting revenge as much as you'd like to, as much as I would like to in one particular instance, but it's not. That's not what forgiveness is. It might feel good in the moment to think about getting even in some way, but that's not forgiveness. It doesn't resolve anything. It doesn't fix anything. It only increases the anger and the resentment, and then it's that tit for tat thing. So whoever it was that you were angry at, or who you need to forgive, it only makes things worse, unfortunately. Sometimes you think, well, I'd really like to. That doesn't help. Forgiveness is something that you have to do for yourself. No one else can make you do it. No one else can force you to forgive another person. Maybe when you were a kid, your mom or your dad or whoever would say, oh, go over there and say I'm sorry, and then you have to forgive so-and-so for hitting you or whatever. As a kid, we learned to say, I'm sorry and I forgive you, just to say it to please whoever's taking care of us. It doesn't always mean that we've actually forgiven them. It doesn't always mean that they were actually sorry, but they got a check mark from whoever it was that told them to do it, and so everything's good, right? Not always. Forgiveness is not something that can be forced. Just because you want to forgive doesn't mean that forgiveness has been achieved. It just means that you want to do it, which is the first step, actually, is wanting to forgive. So, how do you do it? So, there's 4 phases of forgiveness. Phase 1 is uncovering whatever it was that happened, to help you understand whatever it was that happened and how that's negatively impacted your life since it happened. Whether it was something you did or somebody else did to you, whatever it is that needs forgiveness, the first part is finding out what that is and how it has impacted your life. The second phase is the decision phase. It's the pros and cons phase. So this is where you figure out the deeper understanding of what forgiveness is, and we just went through that, and then making the decision to choose or reject forgiveness as an option. It's like, do I choose to forgive this person for this incident right now or not? If not, you're done, move on. If so, there's 2 more phases. So you write down this pros and cons list in phase 2. What are the benefits of me forgiving this person right now, and what are the cons of me forgiving this person right now? Usually, the cons list is pretty short, because all the benefits over here on the pros list of forgiving whoever, your mental health will improve, your physical health can improve, your spiritual health can improve. In some cases, your financial health can improve, because if you're feeling better about yourself in all these other ways, you tend to have a greater desire or a greater ability to put your efforts into something like work. People sometimes get distracted by resentment so much that they're incapacitated to the point where they don't go to work. It's true. And speaking of work, phase 3 is all about work. It's called the work phase. And the work phase is where you start to understand the offender, again, whether it's you or someone else, keep that in mind, and you start to understand them in a new way. Again, you're not excusing what happened, you're not rationalizing what happened, you're trying to understand what was going on in that person's life, again, yourself or someone else, at the moment of the offense and in the past if you know it. And then that might allow you to have more positive feelings toward the offender or toward yourself, depending on the situation. For example, if you were abused by, let's say, your dad, maybe understanding his life as a child, maybe he was abused as a child, and again, we're not excusing it, he's responsible for his own actions. But again, understanding where the person's coming from and why they reacted in a way that they did. Let's say, for example, instead of, say you did something that dad didn't like, and then dad spanked you hard a couple of times, maybe beat you a couple of times in that instant. But I want to make it clear, I'm not excusing that. But again, trying to understand what his life might have been like as a child. Was he also abused as a child? Maybe, maybe not. I'm not excusing it. But in that particular moment, what did that trigger in him to cause him to react like that? Was there a substance abuse issue? Was he abused as a child? Was there something else? So understanding more about the offender, again, and if it's yourself, it's the same thing. Maybe you lashed out at somebody, and you need to forgive yourself for lashing out at whoever. What was the circumstances of your life at that moment? Because we tend to have 20/20 hindsight. We go back and go, wow, I really could have done better in that situation. Well, you know what? 9 times out of 10, if you could have done better, you would have done better. You did the best you could in that moment. Same with whoever it is that's abusing you, or whatever the offense was. I'm not saying it's always abuse. It could just be a slight. Somebody didn't say hi to you in the grocery store, and now you're mad at them. Well, maybe they didn't see you. Maybe they were focused on something else. Maybe they saw you, but you were out of context, and they didn't recognize you, or whatever. There's all these kind of things that are possibilities for the reason that somebody does something that might offend you. And then that offense, you might need to forgive them for something that they don't even know they did. Happens a lot in like church settings and things like that, especially people who are religious, who know the scriptures that say, you're required to forgive everybody regardless, and it's up to God to do the judgment. Well, sometimes people get irritated by that, frankly, because they want to have judgment. So understanding the situation, thinking of all the possibilities, again, going back to that little brief example of somebody in the store. If you see somebody in the store that you know from somewhere else, but they kind of are turning around and they kind of glance and they kind of see you, but they don't really acknowledge you, even though you're going, hi, they may not have seen you. Give that an option. Or maybe they saw you, but didn't focus on you. How many times do you look at something but not see it? Right? So maybe they saw you, but didn't really see you, and didn't go, oh, wait, that's so-and-so. Cut them some slack. Unless they go, oh, that's so-and-so, and then they flip you the bird, well, that's different. You'll still need to forgive them for that, but it's a little different situation. I'm just saying, there's other reasons people do things that you might be offended by that you need to forgive them for. So the deepening phase is phase 4. And during that final phase, that's the phase of forgiveness where you learn to decrease the negative emotions associated with whatever it was that happened, whether it was something you did or someone else did to you, and finding meaning in what happened. Recognizing ways that you might have grown because of what happened. Think of all the time and energy that you might have been spending or have spent or still spend thinking of ways to get even, or thinking about the offense or the offender, or adjusting your life around, avoiding the And have you grown because whatever it is that has happened? Sometimes people who have had really, really ratty childhoods grow up to be some of the most compassionate people on the planet because they know what it's like to be abused. And maybe, for instance, their abusers will never care, ever, or maybe they're dead, and there's no way to resolve it with them. Still, this process helps you, not them. Right? Are you stronger now or weaker now because you decided to forgive or not? It's all of that. It's all of those ways that you've grown or not grown, harboring these feelings of, revenge or hate or whatever it is that you have toward the person, the offense. Again, that goes toward you too, because sometimes when we do things that we just can't forgive ourselves for, we carry around a lot of guilt and shame. Those two things really negatively affect how we interact with everyone else. And a lot of times we tend to think that our own guilt or our own shame or whatever only affects us. But that's not true. Why is that not true? Because your interactions with other people generally are more blunted. Like, let's say somebody gives you a compliment and you're like, oh, well, thanks, Inside, you might be thinking, well, if they only knew everything that I know about me, they'd never say something that nice to me. So your interaction with that person, you might think that they're being insincere. So basically it boils down to whether or not you've made a decision to forgive whoever, again, yourself or someone else, and how life might be different if you choose not to forgive right now, or if you choose to forgive right now. Think of all the ways that life could be different if you choose to forgive right now. And again, going back to the beginning, forgiveness is a process. You have good days and bad days. Some days you think, oh, okay, I'm doing pretty good, I forgive this person. And then you have a little flash, a little thought or a flare up, or maybe you see the person and you're like, I can't forgive this person right now. Fine. It's a process. And there's a writing process that you can do too about these 4 phases. You can actually write through some of these, and actually it works better if you do that. Write down all these different phases, the work phase and all that other stuff. So if you're interested in learning how to forgive through these 4 phases and doing the writing exercise, I will put a link underneath the video, and you probably will have to click on see more, just below, not see more, but see more underneath the video, and there'll be a link down there where you can go and print off a little 4-page thing that has a little writing exercise that you can do to process something that you need to forgive. When you're doing this forgiveness exercise, it might be good to start with something that's small, a little bit easier to forgive than maybe some giant, massive thing that you've been packing around for 40 years. So if you think you're having a problem with forgiveness, that you have someone in your life that you really need to forgive and it's really negatively impacting your life, you might consider maybe seeing a therapist, maybe a life coach, maybe talking to someone about it that's like a third party that's not involved in the situation, and working through that, and maybe doing this writing exercise that I'll put a link down there to help resolve some of these things that you're packing around. Why pack around more stuff than you need to pack around, And your backpack gets full after, a few years of life. You start throwing things in your backpack to pack around the rest of your life. That whole thing about she comes with baggage. Well, that's part of baggage. Because if you're having problems forgiving somebody first, let's use the grocery store example of you wave at somebody, they don't see you or acknowledge you. If you get offended by something like that, odds are high that you get offended by a lot of different things that are similar, so you're carrying around a lot of stuff. That's the baggage. So there's some issues there. So what does that trigger in you from the past? Where did that start? Because it all starts somewhere. So let's use that example of the grocery store. Somebody's in the grocery store, you wave at them, they don't acknowledge you. Why was that so offensive? Why was that so offensive? Go back. How far back does that feeling in your body of rejection go? Who was the first person to reject you, and when did you first feel that? Maybe that's the person you need to forgive, or that's the event you need to forgive, instead of that person who didn't wave at you in the grocery store. You know what I mean? Yeah, you do. So, that's the little spiel on forgiveness. It's a huge, giant topic, but I thought I'd just like touch on it today. If I get enough likes, maybe I'll do another one on another part of forgiveness. But again, don't carry around more than you need to carry around. And remember to include yourself in the forgiveness pile, because sometimes that's the hardest person to forgive. But you have to live with yourself. You see yourself every day, whether you want to or not. You might want to start forgiving yourself, because not everything you did that you think was offensive or you think was wrong was actually as bad as you think it was. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but usually it's not. So, for me and my goofy hat, that's about all we got for today. Thanks for joining me, and if you want to check in again, I'm sure there'll be another video, and for the moment, I guess I'll talk to you later. Little squirrelies. Oh, there's one. What you doing, little squirrelies? Oh, oh. Oh, there's two of them over there. Do you see them? Oh, there goes another one, look. Running across his tail. He's so cute. Dang, those things are so cute. There's a little, tiny, tiny little lizard right there in the sunlight. Do you see him? Do you see him? Isn't he cute? Little baby lizard. He's a teeny baby lizard too. Look at him, how tiny he is. Hi, little lizard. Where'd the squirrels go? I just saw them. Where you going, Mr. Squirrel? Yeah, oh, oh. There they all are. Oh, oh, there goes another one. They're everywhere. There's a bunch of them over in the rocks. Hi, little squirrels. Look at them all. They're so dang cute, man. Again, the squirrel moments. Gotta have a squirrel moment everywhere I go.